You are listening to One Nation Under Crime, a chronological true crime podcast. Each week, we go through our nation's history and discuss one case from each year starting in 1800. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Leah.
And this has been a bit of a roller coaster couple of weeks for Leah and I.
Yes.
We,
Yes.
our local, what did you call it? A newspaper, I guess it is?
It's
they have a newspaper, but they have a website.
Yeah, it started as a newspaper years ago, but we've gotten a little,
As the journalism
techie.
community is dying, it's fine. Me and my journalism major is real bitter about it. But yeah, so it's called the Shelby County Reporter. I posted it on pretty much all of our social medias, except for Instagram because I couldn't really tag it. But I did share like my tweet from Twitter on there. But yeah, the Shelby County Reporter featured us in.
We're famous.
I know, which is funny because a lot of people got to see our faces and they hadn't before. So that was pretty interesting. But we gained like a lot of new listeners.
And I have a funny that I haven't told you.
Oh, really?
So so the listeners that are not from the South are going to love this. The local grocery store in Columbiana is the Piggly Wiggly.
The pig. Got it.
So my sister and I favor. We look a lot alike. We have the same hair.
Y'all, yes.
And we do favor if you don't know us, especially. And she, just after the article came out, my sister went to the pig. We both live in the same town. And the cashier said, "Hey, didn't I see you in an article? Don't you have a podcast?" And she was like, "That's my sister." And she was like, "So you got recognized."
the first person to get recognized on our podcast is your sister. Oh, of course.
But still, we were recognized.
That's so funny. Yeah, a lot of people started listening to the podcast from a lot of different areas. Oh, we got our first Virgin Islands listener this, I want to say like today, actually.
We'd love to come visit you.
I know. We've gotten a lot of new listeners, though. We've got, new listeners in Germany now. We've got, we're worldwide. We've got listeners in New Zealand. We've got listeners pretty much everywhere.
We're a global podcast.
It's crazy to think that our podcast is global because if anybody has been with us since the beginning, then you'll recall when my boyfriend said, how weird it would be if y'all were popular more outside of the U.S. than in it. So anyways, it's kind of funny, but hi to all of our new listeners.
We're just popular.
Now that you've found us. As we've said, I'm Kayla, she's Leah, and if you've listened, if you're getting caught up on the podcast from the beginning, because we do have some people who have done that, they've started at the beginning. I can see kind of how people download the podcast, so it's interesting to see how people listen. So welcome to...
Glad to have you.
The club, the coven, I don't know what we are. We discussed last week you're a witch. It came out. People discussed it. We're all aware now. Leah's deepest, darkest secret came out.
Yeah.
And then tagging on to that, we are now on YouTube. So if you or someone you know and love or don't love or no, wants to, if they're not a fan of listening to podcasts, if they prefer YouTube, my boyfriend, he prefers to listen to podcasts on YouTube. So if that's you as well, or if it's somebody that we are on YouTube, you can find us. It's same One Nation Under Crime. All of our episodes are on there. You can listen to all of them there as well, if you would like. And we also have, you can create playlists on YouTube. So I've put together some playlists on there. So there's a playlist of murders and there's a playlist of disappearances. So it just depends on if you're in the mood for something or another. If you don't, you don't want to listen to one thing, you can listen to something else. But
so you will have your very own agent.
Yeah,
tracking you.
Yes. So you can have your own
Steve.
Brad. No, they get Chad. So Chad. Yeah, Brad's next door. next door cubicle. So, if you go on there, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Who knows? You might see our faces on there eventually. I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast also listen to a lot of the similar podcasts to us, which is super funny because if you go on Apple Podcasts and you scroll down to the bottom, it'll say like, if you like this podcast, then you'll like this podcast, or, and it'll give you like a list of podcasts. And the list of podcasts are all podcasts that I specifically listen to.
That's funny.
So it's like, if you like One Nation Under Crime, then you'll like True Crime Obsessed. And That's Why We Drink. Morbid. And I'm like, oh, it's so weird seeing their name under our podcast.
You're like, I like all of them.
I know. So if y'all like, I know a lot of people will listen to, and That's Why We Drink. Love Christine and Em, but they each week, along with their episode each Sunday, they come out with a video of their episode, and it's of them recording, so you like just see them in person. And so who knows?
I'm gonna have to dress up if we start doing
that.
Well,
you
like
are
makeup,
but it could be really
stuff.
fun. We could like decorate the background for the different seasons. It could be fun. So we'll have to see. It's something that we thought of. It's something that I've thought of to kind of see, because a lot of people do like to see their podcast, like they like to do things that way. So that might be something that we do, but for the time being, we're now on YouTube, so you can go find us there. Pretty much any way that you would like to find us, you can find us.
Yeah.
Except for TV. Like, you can find us.
But if somebody wants to like pay us to be on TV,
I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Zach Bagans, Ghost Adventures, talking to you.
I don't want to go on a ghost adventure. I do not. I'm not down
Leah
with that.
wouldn't make it.
I'm not a fan.
He did a ghost hunt recently. I haven't recorded. I haven't watched yet at Joe Exotic's zoo.
Oh my!
And they actually, if I recall correctly, like I said, I've not watched it yet. I think they had to shut down filming because they thought they found remains, and they had to shut down filming, and the FBI had to come in. So, anyways,
I'm not down for that creepy stuff. I'm not that. And I'll hold down the fort. I'll watch your animals.
This is our last episode before Halloween. So it's our last official spooky season episode. Our next episode, it's still spooky season, but it's not as,
moving on to thankfulness.
Yes, I suppose. I just want to live in the spooky season. It's great.
I just want to live in spooky.
I just want to live in spooky. Like, it's a town. That'd be great. I should
Halloween
create
Town?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I would like Halloween Town per se. I do love Halloween Town, the movies, except for the fourth. We all know it's a sham.
I introduced my nephew to Halloween Town.
Oh,
my 5-year-old nephew.
So good.
He enjoyed it.
So good. Love Halloween. Have you seen the second one recently?
I've only seen the first one.
Well, for any of those of you who have watched it recently, the second one, Cal's son is in it. Well, Cal and Marnie end up getting married in real life. Like, they're married to this day. They're a couple.
I don't know these people.
So Marnie, she's the girl witch in Halloween Town.
Yeah, I've only watched it once.
Yeah. Okay. For those millennials of us who can't understand, I understand.
I'm older
I feel your
than
pain.
you.
You said it. I didn't.
Yeah. That the generation gap gets us every now and then.
So on that, I hope that y'all are enjoying your spooky season. Y'all have this coming out Monday, so y'all got till Sunday to get all the spookiness in, and let us know what y'all are doing. I want to know what y'all are doing. You going to a pumpkin patch? You going to pick apples? Morbid, the podcast. Elena went to go pick apples because they live in Boston, and they went to actually go pick apples. And I want to say she said she picked it's some outlandish amount, but like 42 pounds of apples.
Oh, no.
And so she's like, we're making all the apple things. Because they're both very, very into like Halloween. And because they've also been to Salem and everything. And that's also where Hocus Pocus was filmed. And
I would love to go see that. Come back.
Hocus Pocus is a good one. Ellie, my daughter, she is going to be a black cat for Halloween. That's what she's decided. So
with sparkles, by the way.
Yes, with sparkles. She says she's going to be Binks.
I love it.
So good times. But yeah, y'all have got a week left to get in all of the spookiness that you have, and I hope that y'all enjoy it. I hope that you take our podcast along with you for your spooky times.
And can
Hope,
I throw
hope
out a
y'all
pet
enjoy.
peeve?
Pet peeve
A pet peeve.
of what?
Okay,
Do you have a
so
pet named Peeves?
no, that's a
Oh,
ghost
it's
from
Harry Potter.
Potter.
Got it. Okay.
So Sarah Sanderson says amuck, 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 which
Mm-hmm.
is like my favorite part of the movie. If you're gonna wear a shirt that says amuck, 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 spell it correctly.
Oh yeah, you got to be real careful when you buy stuff like that. It, yeah, I
It's like putting an
understand.
apostrophe on your door hanger. Ugh.
Yeah, so that's a big pet peeve of Leah's, and I'm sure we'll get into it more when Christmas comes around and people are sending out like Christmas cards. So if you have, and this is a pet peeve of mine too, just because
It's y'all
journalism, if you
friends.
address something to anyone, do not put an apostrophe in there. Like, say you're sending it, we'll
To
just the McAllisters. You're sending something to the McAllisters, like the McAllisters in Home Alone. And you're sending it to them. Do not put an apostrophe S,
no.
because an apostrophe indicates a possessiveness of
Uh-huh,
it,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
and it's not a possessive, it's a plural.
Mhm, mhm.
So leave out the apostrophe,
Please,
unless
please.
you are saying to the McAllister's house,
Yes.
then put an apostrophe. But if you're just saying the McAllisters, that is just a plural, not
Yes.
a possessive. Leave out
Every
the
time
apostrophe.
you use an apostrophe incorrectly, an elf dies.
Mm. Oh my gosh.
Stop killing elves.
But
Remember, killing is bad.
but yeah, killing is badly, Leah. It's her. It's
That's my thing.
Leah's advice to the world. Killing is bad. But yeah, a lot of people where we live, they make those door hangers that have like, they're seasonal and they put their name on them and everything like that. And a lot of people do put apostrophes in theirs, which I mean, I guess could make sense. The McAllister's door hanger, I guess, but like it doesn't, if you're trying to say like a collective group of who the family is, also just don't do that. You're also telling people who lives there in case somebody doesn't know who lives there. You're also telling people who live there. So just don't do it. Just like the people who put the signs out in their yard of my kid is a kindergartner at so and
Yeah.
so, or my son is a football player, number blah, blah, blah at so and so high school. I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, take that out of your yard.
I mean, you can say, like Bronco
Supporter
Bronco
of the
fan.
Broncos. Like
Yeah.
it's some, but yeah, guys, be really careful with that. I understand it's really cute. Just like the stickers on the back of people's cars where like one's a ballerina and one's a baseball player and it has their like the kid's name in the middle of it. That always really gets me too, because I'm like,
Mhm.
you're also telling people the names of your kids that are with
Yeah.
you. So if they follow you into a store and they call your kid's name, your kid could be like, oh, they know my name. Anyways,
Yeah.
people need to be hyper vigilant. That's all I'm saying about that. But we're gonna go into, well,
Yeah. Sorry, I already went down a rabbit trail,
it's spooky season. It's right before.
and that's spooky.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead. We'll say it here right at the top of the episode, so we'll address it here, so it's not a real quick departure towards the end of the episode. And just because of the end of our episode last week, we'll go ahead and we'll say it here. We are very aware of how the Petito case has formed at this point. I actually texted Leah day before yesterday, and she was like, I was just reading the article before I texted you about it. And we are aware of how that has
ending.
transpired at this point. I it's a very difficult situation, and I was talking to my boyfriend about it, because the thing that I text Leah back about it was all of the answers died with him,
Mm-hmm.
because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And as I can only think of it as a mom,
Mm-hmm.
and as a mother, I would want answers. And my only question would be why. I don't want to know how. I just want to know why. Not that even it's going to be a satisfying answer.
Yeah, but just to
But
know
why?
Mhm.
And, my boyfriend, coming from a dad's perspective, and he is a very protective dad, his answer was vastly different than mine.
Yeah,
And
he's like,
he was like, "Nay." but that's also, it's not to be disrespectful. He's coming from a very protective dad standpoint of, you know, n- if that were my daughter and I were her father, I would not. He was saying, I know it's a difficult subject. He was just saying, I would not be remorseful because, and I said, but I would want to know.
Mhm.
And he was like, I don't know why you would want to know because it's not going to help anything. And I said, I get that, but as a mother, I would still, my question will always be why. And it was funny because he's really into Twitter, and so he was on Twitter, and about 5-10 minutes later, he goes, "Apparently, you're not the only one that shares that sentiment," because he was seeing it a lot. Um, and
But women and men are wired so
so
differently.
differently. But I'm a why person anyways
You
too.
are.
I
You
very
are.
much am. And I still, not that it's any of my business, not that I have any right to know
Sure.
anything about it, but that is a curiosity of anyone who sees a tragic situation like that
Mhm.
of why. And I know that we do know the cause of death as far as Gabby goes. At this point, we're not 100% sure of the cause of death of Laundry, but I do know they could only identify him by his teeth, so that's not good.
Yeah.
My boyfriend seems to think because of where he was, if it was a sorry, trigger guys for any of this, but if it was a situation of where he died by suicide, he says that where he was, it's a very swampy area. It was likely an animal that might have found him, and that could be where that's coming from. So it's
Mm.
very likely that we may not ever know um, that. But just to go ahead and address it, we are aware of it. It's not likely something we'll cover on this case. It's been very widely covered
Yeah.
at this point, and it'd be 2025, 2026 before we'd get there. So, if that. So, yeah, we do know the outcome of it at this point, and again, I feel for everyone involved in the situation. It's something that hopefully none of us will ever have to experience in our lifetime, and it's something that no one should ever have to experience.
Correct.
It's very tragic.
Because
So,
again, killing,
ki-
killing
killing
is
is bad.
bad.
Leah. Leah was listening to our episodes the other day in the car, and she got to the episode. I think it's 1814,
Think
and and Leah just says in it, "Killing is bad, guys." And it's
just
like,
don't do
oh
it.
gosh, yeah. Somebody make a T-shirt of that. Killing is bad, and then like off to the bottom dash Leah. Um, anyways,
Well,
so
I mean, where's the law?
we'll get into this week's episode. It's an episode more than a case. I wanted to find something that was kind of outside of the box from something that we usually cover. It is spooky season. It is the week before Halloween. So this week, we are covering the Manhattan burial crisis of 1822.
A burial crisis.
Yes, a burial crisis in 1822 of Manhattan.
Oh dear. Running out
So,
of land.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. So, in saying that, no, there's not any real trigger warning as far as the case goes. I will say at some points, some descriptions of things are going to get pretty, as Christine on, and that's why we drink says vomitous. Um,
Vomitous. I like that word.
I think yeah, Christine and M say vomitous. I think that is
Vomitous.
it'll kind of get there at some points just because of descriptions of things. But as far as anything really goes, it's really more morbid than anything
You know
else.
what? Vomitous could describe some of my past fashion choices.
It can describe a lot of things that you didn't think that it could. Honestly,
Vomitous.
it's a good one.
I like it.
So our sources this week, the New York City's Hart Island, A Cemetery of Strangers by Michael T. Keene. And then Atlas Obscura, which if no one knows that website, go to it. It is so fascinating. Atlas Obscura, it covers Basically, exactly what it indicates. It's obscure places around the world and information about them that people don't know.
It sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
It does. And it's called Atlas Obscura, but there was a really good article on there, and it was the Manhattan burial crisis of 1822 makes every cemetery today seem amazing.
Huh.
So we'll get into it. Like I said, it's just an interesting story this week as far as that goes, and sometimes it's good to take a break from the murder.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
so while still a little morbid, still in keeping with it, we're gonna go into it. Our events in 1822, January 7th, the first printing was done in Hawaii. February 23rd, Boston, Massachusetts was incorporated as a city officially. I have always wanted to go to Boston.
Me too.
Um,
We almost chose that for our 20th anniversary trip.
y'all almost chose a lot of things.
Listen, we talked about a
Y'all did
lot.
talk a lot about a lot of things.
Look, I finally got him to take me
I know.
somewhere.
March 9th, Charles Graham of New York was granted the first patent for artificial teeth.
That was me chomping my teeth, in
Yeah.
case you wondered.
March 22nd, the New York Horticultural Society was founded. March 30th, Congress combined East and West Florida into the Florida Territory. May 1st, John Phillips became the first mayor of Boston. July 22nd, this is almost something that I covered for this year, but I did not for several reasons. Um, but Denmark Vesey was, and I believe that's how you say his last name. It's spelled Vesey. Denmark Vesey was hanged for plotting a slave rebellion in Charleston, South Carolina.
Hmm.
It is and we'll get a little bit more. I'll talk about him again in just a bit, but it was a slave rebellion that had not taken place yet. It was just at this point a plot, but it very much was a um, very well planned plot, and he was hanged for just plotting the rebellion.
I hear Charleston's a beautiful city.
I mean, of what Leah knows or doesn't know about it, but there are a lot of reasons that I did not choose to cover that case this week. One, it is a very, very, very involved topic
Mm-hmm.
that involved. I mean, the amount of information that was out there about it was honestly overwhelming for the length of an episode that we have.
Yeah.
I could have, and I do understand, Kayla, you could have done it into 2 episodes. I also understand that as well. But I had my reasons. There was a lot of pretty gnarly violence
Mm.
involved in it that I did not feel I would adequately be able to cover and do it justice. But his name's Denmark Vesey is very important. July 2nd of 1822 is when he was hanged for plotting a slave rebellion. July 4th, a 24th star was added to the U.S. flag, which represented Missouri. August 22nd, the English ship Orion landed at Yerba Buena, which is modern day San Francisco. And December 12th, Mexico was officially recognized as an independent nation by the United States. And this is undated, but it's also related to our case today. The last major outbreak of yellow fever in New York City occurred.
Hmm.
March 22nd, we're going to discuss, not March 22nd. Sorry. Our birth's in 1822 because I apparently can't read today. Her date of birth is not actually known, but she was born in March. Harriet Tubman was born. She was, I believe her original name is pronounced, it's Araminta. I believe it's Araminta.
That Sounds right.
Ross was her last name. She was a Black abolitionist, humanitarian, and a Union spy during the American Civil War. She's very, very influential in U.S. history. I am sure we will get to her once we get more into the Civil War. I'm sure we'll discuss her a lot more. She is either a Pisces or an Aries, depending on when she was born. So March is the only thing that we have about her
Right.
that I could find. So April 3rd, Edward Everett Hale, born, he was, let's see. Yeah, I can't speak today. It's one of those days, guys. April 3rd, Edward Everett Hale, American author and historian who is known for writing The Man Without a Country.
That's sad.
And he was an Aries. We discussed this guy in our last episode.
Oh.
Frederick Law Olmsted. He was a landscape architect. We talked about him in our last episode as being the landscape architect that built the first urban park in Buffalo, New York. He was actually born this year, and he was a Taurus. We will actually discuss him more. April 27th, Ulysses S. Grant was born. He is our 18th president of the United States. He is also a Taurus. May 18th, Matthew Brady. He's a photographer, and he was known for photographs of the Civil War. And he photographed Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, and Abraham Lincoln.
Cool.
Also a Taurus. A lot of those this week, apparently.
Quite the portfolio.
I know. And then August 15th, we have Virginia Eliza Clem. She was the wife of Edgar Allan Poe. She's a Leo. September 16th, Charles Crocker, one of the founders of the Central Pacific Railroad, which was constructed as part of the Transatlantic Railroad, was born. He's Virgo, like Leah. Then we also have, on September 20th, Elizabeth Libby Smith Miller. She was an advocate and a financial supporter of the women's rights movement.
Votes for women.
Also a Virgo. October 4th, the last one of this year, Rutherford B. Hayes was born. He is the 19th president of the United States, and he is a Libra. So, we discussed earlier, so let's get to our deaths of 1822. So, as we discussed before, July 2nd of this year was when Denmark Vesey was hanged for the plot of the slave rebellion in Charleston, South Carolina. And then May 6th, Charles Peale Polk was an American portrait painter. Painters are not authors, guys.
Well, I mean,
golly, I cannot read today.
are.
That's true. They're authors. So some of Charles Polk's works are in the National Gallery in DC today.
That's an accomplishment. That's pretty cool.
So July of 1822, New York City saw the highest death rates from yellow fever, specifically around Trinity Cemetery. We know that place.
I was going to say, is that at Trinity
So,
Church?
we briefly discussed Manhattan in episode 1, but we did end in 1790. So Manhattan, after the Revolutionary War, saw tremendous amounts of growth. The city gained its reputation as an economic center as a result of the policies enacted by our first Treasury of Secretary, Alexander Hamilton.
Did you mean Secretary of the Treasury?
Secretary of Treasury.
You said Treasury of Secretary.
Oh, maybe Secretary. I might have been thinking Treasury Secretary.
Yeah.
Again, guys, just ignore me today. Well, don't ignore me because you have to
don't
listen to me
ignore
for the
her.
rest of the episode. By 1810, Manhattan surpassed Philadelphia as the largest city in the United States. The Commissioner's Plan of 1811 laid out the island in the grid pattern that it is famous for today. We are going to go a little bit farther than our story today in the history of Manhattan, but we will eventually be back here at some point, so we're not going to cover everything up until this point. So from 1821 to 1855, the population in the city quadrupled. And at the time, there weren't any designated places for, quote, passive recreation. There were a few open spaces for people to use for those purposes. And would you like to guess what those spaces were that people were using for picnics, badminton, croquet in the park?
I'm,
Would you
ass-
like to guess?
I'm assuming that Central Park wasn't a thing yet.
No.
So is it churchyards?
Cemeteries.
Okay. Fun fact about my life that you may not know.
Me?
You may not know this. I grew up between two cemeteries.
Yes, I did know this.
Okay. We had a front cemetery and a back cemetery, like that's what we called it, or
Mhm.
graveyard, is what
Mhm.
we called it, front graveyard and back graveyard. We flew kites in the front graveyard
Mhm.
because there was one big part that was not yet used. I learned how to drive a car
In a
in the
graveyard.
graveyard.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
couldn't hurt anybody.
Clearly, they were all dead.
I mean, learned how to ride my bike in the graveyard. Had the coolest middle school birthday parties because we played murderer in the
Dear
graveyard.
Lord. But I'm the morbid one out of the two of us. Okay, got it.
Flew kites. Guess where we flew kites?
In the graveyard.
In the
So, yeah, you and the people back in this time had a whole lot in common.
So
Yeah.
this is not really weird to me just
Yeah.
because I grew up in between two graveyards.
Well, you'll appreciate this next line then. So,
So you tried to shock me, and I'm like, "Hey, that's
well,
my,
I mean, I did.
that's my
I
childhood."
did know that you grew up right next to two cemeteries, but yeah. Well,
I
for
mean,
most people, it would be
the funeral
surprising.
home was like 2 houses down, and so people parked at my house when there was a funeral and just walked to the to the
No,
funeral
I
home.
know. No.
Ah, okay, sorry, small town living. There you go.
Well, you'll appreciate my next line.
Okay, continue.
The cemeteries were viewed as an escape from the noise of the city, and the neighbors were very quiet.
I mean, true. True.
When the commissioner's plan of 1811 outlined the street grid, there were several small open spaces allotted for parks, but nothing nearly as large as what was to come. John Randall Jr. surveyed the large area in the middle of the city and placed markers for construction. There is only one survey bolt remaining in a rock north of the present. Yes, Dairy. I thought Dairy. I didn't write that right. Yes, it's present. It's Dairy Street and 66th Street Traverse. So if they continued straight, it would be right on that mark. Central Park was opened to the public in 1858 and became the first landscape public park in an American city.
Cool.
Frederick Law Olmsted, who we discussed, was born in 1822, the year we're discussing, and Calvert Vaux partnered together to enter a park design competition for Central Park called the Greenwood Plan. Prior to working with Vaux, Olmsted had never designed or executed a landscape design.
Wow.
Never. And your first project is Central Park. Okay,
Wow.
We did discuss this also in a previous episode.
Yep,
The
yep.
Olmsted Brothers architectural firm designed several college campuses,
One being.
including the University of Montevallo, go
Yep.
Falcons, the Louisiana State University, or as some people know it as LSU. They are a large rival to a lot of people in the SEC. We are well aware. We have the University of Florida, also known as UF. A lot of people know it as that. That is where, if some people are thinking, is that where? Yes, that's where Tim Tebow did go to school. Then we have Harvard Business School, Johns Hopkins University, Ohio State University, or OSU, Stanford University, Samford University. Those are two different places, guys.
Two very different
Two
ones.
different ones. One of them is in Alabama, and it is a very well-known college in Alabama that is also very beautiful. And
Very, very beautiful.
I can also see how they also designed it as well.
Yeah.
Then the University of Chicago and the University of Notre Dame. So quite a lot of
A lot of
places.
Alabama's rivals.
Did you look them up though too? Because they also Troy University.
Really?
Yeah, there's like
There's a lot in Alabama.
a lot. There's more than this in Alabama. I want to say University of Alabama at Huntsville.
Really?
Troy University, University of Alabama at Huntsville. There's another college in Montgomery. Like there's a
Cool.
list, and there's a lot in Alabama that they actually designed. So
That's very
a
cool.
little bit of history on that. And as we did discuss before, yes, they did design our college that we went to. It is very lovely.
It really is.
They did not establish our college until later because I did look up the year to see when it was coming so that I could discuss it. So when we get there, it'll be a while.
It'll be a minute.
So today, Central Park covers 843 acres in the middle of Manhattan.
And it's so pretty.
Gorgeous. It is the most visited urban park in the U.S. with an estimated 42 million visitors annually.
Wow.
And it is the most filmed location in the world.
Huh. But there's so many different locations
So
to
many
film.
locations
I mean,
to
I've
film there.
not been to every inch of it.
No,
you
I've only
know?
seen parts of it. It's huge.
We went to the zoo when our youth group went.
Mm-hmm.
So fun.
I didn't go to the zoo. I can't remember where all I saw in there, but I did see. Anyways, I saw a lot of stuff, but I wasn't there super long, so I had to.
That's where I discovered the toasted coconut.
Very good. Very good.
I would love some right now. Let's go to New York.
Yes. So the 2.5 acre cemetery at Trinity Church in Lower Manhattan. It's home to several notable people,
She's buried in Trinity Church near you.
including Alexander Hamilton, Eliza Hamilton, Angelica Schuyler Church, Philip Hamilton, Hercules Mulligan, who, if you are not aware, was
Mulligan.
gotta love him, spying on the British government. So
Taking the measurements.
oh gosh, such good. My daughter Ellie loves Hercules Mulligan. She also loves David Diggs just in general.
Oh,
Like she
sure.
likes both.
How can you
both.
not?
So anyways, he was a spy during the Revolutionary War. Robert Fulton is also buried there. He was the inventor of the first commercially successful steam engine.
Oh.
And Albert Gallatin, he is the founder of NYU, New York
Oh.
University. So,
I have a friend that works there.
really,
I do. Very
If-
proud of her.
if you've been to the quaint cemetery, then you would think, maybe 100 people are buried there based off of markers? Because there's not a ton of
I was
markers.
gonna say, if that,
and it's
I mean,
2.5 acres. It's not
yeah,
very
and,
large.
and they're buried very. I mean, they're tight.
yeah. So what would you say? 100 maybe?
Yeah, and then there's the dark, creepy tunnels inside the church.
But on just the cemetery,
Yeah,
I would
and
say
they're packed
probably
in
100.
there like sardines. I mean, that's not a very nice way to say that, but they're packed in there.
Now you will see why this was a crisis.
I mean, they're tight.
But
I mean, they had pathways through it for you to step on.
yes, they did. So what people aren't aware of, and Leah and I have both been to the cemetery at Trinity Church, so we are very well aware of how small this space is. Truly, it is not very large
No.
at all.
And I was kind enough to send you pictures when I went because I
Yes.
got to go before you.
I know, and I sent photos to you when I went.
Because we're good friends.
It's very weird when you're standing, and I think I said this before, at Alexander Hamilton's grave, and right across from you is a Dwayne Reed. Anyways, Dwayne Reed, for those of you who don't know, it's like a CVS.
Yeah.
But Dwayne Reed is all over New York. So
But you're sitting there and you're like, this is for real. Like
this
these
is
remains
it.
are
Like you
right
can
here.
touch it. It's very weird. It's very
Well, you
surreal.
can't touch the remains, but
Correct. It's a very surreal experience.
because they don't exhibit the bones because that's weird.
Leah's got issues with that specifically. So what people aren't aware of while they are walking through the beautiful Trinity Cemetery that it is today is that by 1822, it's estimated. I have to look at your face when I say this.
I'm afraid I know what's coming because it's built up real high.
It's estimated that 120,000 bodies were buried in this cemetery.
I knew it. I knew you were going to say that mess.
120,000. And we've been there. And we've been there. Keep this in mind, guys. Like, we have seen it with our own eyes.
I knew you were going to say that mess.
We know how large and how small this is. And 120,000 people were buried in that small space.
I knew you were going to say that.
So, keep in mind that this is simply an estimate based off of the number of deaths that year. The number could actually be much higher. And simply the bodies buried only in 1822 couldn't be tracked because of the amount that they were burying at one time.
I mean, I'm going to say, yes, we did things in the graveyard, but we were always very respectful, and we did not walk on the graves like we were taught that very early, very young. We were very respectful of that, and we did not walk on the graves. So, no, it doesn't bother me to be in a graveyard, but we are respectful. So the fact that now I know I was walking like on top of like bodies, not cool. Not
No,
cool.
no, you weren't. We'll get there.
Ugh. Worse. Worse.
So,
Boo on you.
grave diggers couldn't keep up with the growing demand, and some of these graves were only 2 to 3 feet deep instead of the standard 6 feet that we know today. In July of that year, the highest death rates from yellow fever ever in the city were recorded. The Common City Council and Board of Health passed a resolution in August which prohibited any further burials in the graveyard due to, quote, vehement complaints of offensive exhalations. According to residents near the cemetery, the smell of death was unmistakable.
Oh, no.
A doctor who was investigating the cause of the yellow fever epidemic, only known as Dr. Rosa, I cannot find a first name or last name of cannot find the official first and last name of the doctor. He is only known as Dr. Rosa. He decided to try and fix the problem himself. He recruited a group of men to cover the graveyard in quicklime.
Okay.
So, for those of you who do not know, one, do not Google on your computer what is quicklime used for when it comes to dead bodies, because I did. I just inch my way up that list just
the more
every
you
week.
know.
So, yeah, what's more disturbing is seeing what other people have also been Googling about quicklime. Anyways, quicklime, for those who don't know, it's a chemical compound known as calcium oxide, or CaO, and it is made through the thermal decomposition of limestone or other materials containing calcium carbonate in a lime kiln. Where we live, we are very known of kind of like what lime and stuff is because we have a lot of limestone quarries like around here. So, like you can kind of see it in different places. Not something to be inhaled, period. The material is heated at high temperatures and the remains are quicklime. Quicklime is not a stable material and will react with carbon dioxide, or CO2, from the air, causing it to convert into heat energy. Didn't know you were getting a science lesson this week, did you? So,
Thanks, Kayla.
I gotta make sure all of our listeners are well rounded.
We appreciate that. Move over, Bill Nye.
I am here for you. Oh gosh, I would love to be the next Bill Nye. So, due to this reaction, it is used as not only a source of heat, but a source of light. Due to lime being an alkaline product, contact with skin can cause reactions that range from mild irritation to full-scale burning. It was commonly used to create, you will really, really appreciate this fun fact. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
It was commonly used to create spectacular theatrical bursts of light prior to the invention of electricity. And when used this way, it was known as limelight. So that is what means when you say they were in the limelight. That is what that means. I thought that was fun.
Fantastic.
So,
I thought you were like getting ready to like
No,
be gross.
no,
I
it
really
was
did
really
appreciate that.
no. It's a good fun fact.
I thought you were
No.
being facetious.
No. I'm not going to tell you it's a fun fact and then tell you something gross like that. That was a fun, like when we were talking about Mad Hatters and what those are.
Well, I mean, but sometimes your fun facts, you're facetious when you say
some of my
fun
facts are morbid, anyways.
Okay.
In the Red Cross Emergency Relief Items Catalog, quicklime and lime are listed as a tool for aiding in proper disposal of human remains that cannot be afforded a deep burial.
Well,
However, the goal of the product is not to destroy the body, but rather to prevent putrefaction that creates odor and attracts flies and animals. Quicklime was often used over plague or cholera burials to prevent the spread of disease.
well, I mean, if you got a problem, I'll solve it.
So it makes sense as why he would be like, okay, that's what this has been used for plagues and such. So like yellow fever graves, like this is
Makes sense. I mean,
Right.
that does make sense.
the group of men Dr. Rosa hired started working quickly overnight to cover the shallow graves.
Did they like use masks and such?
Those who lived around the cemetery said they could hear the workers getting violently ill throughout the night.
They did not use masks and such.
This Trinity Church was not the only cemetery that was having issues with over burial, but it was the only one that had problems to this level. The others in the area were the North Dutch Church on William and Fulton Streets, the Middle Dutch Church on Liberty and Nassau, and St. Paul's, which is just north of Trinity Church. The quicklime did somewhat help with the smell, but not completely. Like I said before, the cause of the entire crisis was due to yellow fever, and at this time, it still wasn't known how yellow fever was transmitted, which today we know as mosquitoes. That was the main cause of it, which we also discussed in our very first episode when we talked about Aaron Burr creating a water system for the city, and he didn't do it, which caused an outbreak of yellow fever because mosquitoes and stagnant water.
Aaron Burr's fault.
That's all. That's what we need a T-shirt of. It's all Aaron Burr's fault.
All
Anyways,
goes back to Burr.
I'm sure his descendants would not appreciate that. So once
I don't know what you heard, but whatever.
I don't know what you heard, but whatever it is, Jefferson started it. One of the prominent leaders and doctors started realizing the boundaries of the virus and where they were. They surmised that it was about a block away from Trinity. Finally, when November hit, the virus died down and it was concentrated to just the neighborhood right beside the graveyard. It was thought that this was due to noxious air that was produced by the corpses buried in the cemetery.
Oh.
There were several city bans related to burials in the city in the same year, and an ordinance was passed which created the no burial line, which forbade burials south of Canal Street except for those in family plots. So you had to already have a plot to be able to be buried in that area. The ban didn't just last for 1822 either. By 1839, no burials were allowed south of 14th Street. And then by 1852, just 30 years later, all burials in Manhattan were prohibited.
Oh my. So what'd you do? I mean,
You might be thinking. You might be thinking, Leah, Michelle, where are the bodies going? Well,
I mean, was there a cart ring out? You dead?
they were being, no, that would be great though. I'm not dead yet.
I feel happy.
I think I'll go for a walk. Uh,
Monty
so,
Pythons.
they were being buried in paupers' graves or
Oh.
potter's fields outside of the city limits. City and limits is not one word. Semi limits. Guys, I'm struggling apparently. Typical paupers' graves are for bodies of unknown, unclaimed, or unsavory people. So a lot of people would be buried in potter's graves if, say, they were executed for murder.
Right.
Some of these fields are located in what is now Washington Square Park and Bryant Square in New York City.
Ugh.
Right. So, I mean, not great. So, there were two non-sectarian or not tied to a religion burial grounds that were formed. One being the New York Marble Cemetery in the East Village of Manhattan, which is now the oldest non-denominational cemetery in Manhattan, and the New York City Marble Cemetery. Keep in mind, that is the difference in the names. The New York Marble Cemetery and the New York City Marble Cemetery.
Well, that's not
one
confusing at all.
So the New York City one is just 1 block away. This
Wonder how many times somebody's shown up at the wrong cemetery for a burial,
right?
funeral thing, service.
This is when multiple stacked burials in thick family vaults became the new method
Yeah.
of burial.
Yeah.
This is you'll appreciate my description. This is exactly what it sounds like, multiple coffins stacked on each other in a singular burial plot. Underground, it looked like a Lunchable. When you stack cracker, cheese, meat, cracker, cheese, meat. But then above ground, there were sporadic monuments with the family's names listed on them to mark who was buried below. Leah has her face covered because of my description. That's the only way.
Calling them charcuteries.
That's the only way that I could think of to describe it. I tried to use a double stuffed Oreo. That didn't sound great. So I thought maybe like when you were a kid and you would make a Lunchable stack and it was like 6 pieces of something stacked at one time. Well, now you can think of that. It is not a Lunchable stack any longer. It is a multiple stacked burial Lunchable.
What? Why you gotta call it a Lunchable? Why?
That's the only thing I could think of at the moment.
Oh.
I think Ellie was eating a Lunchable or something. Whenever
Inspiration struck.
So, anyways,
All these dead bodies, Lunchable.
Lunchable.
Serial killer.
So graves were overcrowded and people couldn't be buried in Manhattan
Cannibal.
anymore. And this did not sit well with the elite. So graves started becoming real estate.
Of course they did.
And plots were being sold to the highest bidder.
Of course they were.
Before the ban on new burials, and if you're eating, guys, maybe don't for a second.
I mean, she's already called dead people Lunchables. So really, I mean...
Tomato. Before the ban on new burials, grave diggers would poke the ground with iron rods to find decayed coffins. If the rod gave way, then the coffin was decayed and they could unearth that portion of the graveyard. They would then remove the older remains and put them in the graveyard's charnel house.
The graveyard's what?
Charnel house.
What happens in there?
Charnel.
What was that? What happens there?
This
Is that where it's a bunch of bits? A lot of giblets?
is a building or vault in which corpses or bones are piled.
A lot of giblets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this is exactly
See one of our former
previous
episodes.
Mm-hmm. So this is exactly what was happening when the upper class purchased the plots, because the plots they were purchasing already had people in them.
Mm, mm,
Outside
mm.
hired gravediggers were coming in and removing current bodies from the area and putting them in the charnel house to make room for those who could afford to be buried in the area. The congregation of the German Reformed Church at University Place and 12th Street were not able to stop the sale and removal of bodies from their churchyard, and they went to court to try and stop it in 1846, but they lost. New York City took a lesson from the books of Boston and Philadelphia, who each had their own large cemeteries outside of the city, and decided to look for a plot of land. There was an area in Brooklyn, right across from Lower Manhattan, that the city deemed, quote, safe from urban development. Wonder how safe it is today. In 1838, leaders in the city founded Greenwood Cemetery on 178 acres, which they bought from old Brooklyn farming families, and they added another 300 acres to the cemetery later. It's easy to see that 2.5 acres is much smaller than 478. And in 1842, Trinity Church actually established its own rural cemetery in Washington Heights. In
In the
Washington
heights.
Heights. Yeah, I put Q in the Heights music here.
And we both delivered.
Finally, in 1869, the city resolved its issue with the purchase of Hart Island, which to this day is still the city's public burial ground. The homeless corpses finally found a proper burial place. Today, Trinity Church Cemetery feels like an oasis in the middle of a concrete jungle. Many workers nearby will take a walk on its well traveled sidewalks to get a break from the commotion around them before heading back to the office. It's not uncommon to see someone take their lunch break in the cemetery to detach from the world for just a little bit. All of them unaware of the unrest that occurred under their feet 200 years before. Dun dun
Now, I will say,
dun.
my mother's from Scotland, and the first time I went to Scotland, I was able to see my grandparents' graves that I
Mhm.
hadn't seen before, and I was an adult
Mhm.
when I was finally able to go. I was in my late 20s, which was really cool to be able to see, and I was
Mhm.
able to get flowers to go on their graves because
Mhm.
I remembered my grandfather. He came over when I was in first grade. I didn't remember my grandmother, but I do have pictures of us together.
Mhm.
She came over when
Mhm.
I was like 3 or 4. So we had met, but I didn't remember. She
Mhm.
died very shortly
Right.
after. And um, they double stacked
Yeah.
there because, land.
So a lot of the cemeteries that around that time, from what I could see, yes, double stacking was a thing of
Yeah.
cemeteries.
And mom told me that, and I like wigged out. I was like, what?
Yeah, it's very, very common. And I actually found an article from 2015 where a woman had two family plots. I believe it was either in the New York Marble or the New York City Marble Cemetery. It was one of the two, but she had two graves that were empty. So we know how big of a deal it is to be buried like in Manhattan. The starting price that she was selling these plots for, the starting
Oh, heavens.
price was $350,000 per plot. The starting
Oh,
price.
my.
Yeah. So it's easy to see they were a little bit
Wow.
wanted. And she did end up selling them, but I didn't see how much she ended up selling them for. But I do believe that bidding got over $500,000 for each at one point.
I will tell you, Michael messes with me because he can.
Of course.
You find something and you pick at that thread because
Mhm,
you can.
mhm.
He's not getting cremated because I tell him he can't do that. So he's like, well, baby, you could just, they do now. They can make you into like a diamond and you can
Or a
just
tree.
And then he saw the thing that you can be made into a tree. And I'm like, no, I do not want you as a tree. Well, but baby, you can be a big diamond and you can just wear me around your neck. No, no. I'm putting you in the ground. Or you can be a tree. You can put me in the ground that way. No. No. We're doing normal. We're just doing normal. We're just normal. Oh, and he's like looking at all these crazy things to do.
Look, think of it this way.
I'm not thinking about it.
Think of it this way.
I don't want to think about it.
I know he's listening, so he'll appreciate it. If you make him into a tree,
I'm not going to.
you'll just listen, because I'm telling you, there could be positives to it. Think about it. If he's made into a tree, the oxygen he's no longer breathing, at least he's giving to other people.
I'm not gonna, no. No.
Trees are really good for the environment.
Weird. That is so stinking weird. I love him.
He could be like the tree in Pocahontas.
He's
Grandmother
not Grandmother
Willow.
Willow. No.
He could be Grandmother Willow.
If a tree starts
Can
talking to me,
can he choose what kind of tree he would like to be?
I don't know, but let me tell you, if
Michael, I need to know. Tell me, can you choose what tree you would like? Because if he does and he becomes a willow and you walk past and he gives you a little snap every now and then, at least you know he's still thinking about you in the afterlife.
Let me tell you,
because we know he's going to go first. I mean,
if a tree starts talking to me or snapping me on my butt, let me tell you something.
Leah's going to be like, Kayla, it happened. I don't know what happened, but it happened.
Y'all gonna find me falling out on the ground.
Then I'm gonna be online. What kind of tree would Leah have liked to have been? Just bury Leah right next to him. Look, you can both be willows if you would like.
Dogwood. No.
Okay.
No. Just normal, regular. And I don't want to be giblets.
I mean, I get people not wanting to be buried though. People don't. So I've only been to my father's grave once ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's not far from me by any means. I passed by that church the other day because I had to go somewhere. It's not far from me at all. But as with most things, how I have very different views on life, a grave does nothing for
That's not him.
me. He's not there.
So
why go? Like, that's what I understand is like, for some people who that's just not what they want. I'm like, you know what? I get it, because like it's not like I go visit him. I mean, and my grandparents are buried in the same place, and it's like I don't go visit. Like, it's just not. It's why.
And can I tell you something? Ugh. Can I tell you something? Those glow in the dark crosses and such.
Creepy,
y'all.
It's so creepy. Some people. So I saw it on something the other day, but people are taking chicken wire for Halloween, and they're taking the chicken wire and they're making them look like ghosts.
I've seen that.
So our boss this past week had to go out of town. Both of our bosses did, for something. You'll have to ask one of them about the photo that he took, because I was showed this photo on Friday where they drove past one, and they were like in the woods and drove past one of these things. And he showed me the photo, and I looked at him and I said, nope, that thing comes alive at night. I'm out. But he was like, that's creepy, huh? I was like, that's really creepy.
Those are pretty cool, though.
And it was like foggy, and I was like,
cool.
Nope, I am out. But he said it was randomly in the woods. Like, it was not near a house. It was just there. And that's what I said. That thing comes alive at night. Nope.
You caught it in mid-haunt.
It's very creepy, because it's like a woman with this like dress, and it's very creepy. Very creepy. But yeah, people are making them out of chicken wire, and they're putting them in their yard, and it does look like a ghost.
They're very well done.
Creepy. So, that is our discussion on creepy things for this week of Halloween. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it. I know it's not really a murder or anything, but it's a bizarre happening. That definitely, in case anybody was wondering why people aren't buried in Manhattan anymore.
There you go. And you learned a little bit of Leah's childhood history.
And you learned some science about quicklime.
I mean, all kinds of stuff. You learned how to get rid of a body.
I wasn't gonna say it, but don't use us as a reference
I mean, if you got a
for
Mary Ann
that.
and Wanda situation.
It's true. I mean,
Na 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 na.
or a
na,
practical magic.
na.
If they did that, he would have been dead the first time
Yeah, I don't know
instead of
because
when he came back.
That I love that movie. I need to watch that.
I know it's a good time to go watch Practical Magic.
It is.
I like Practical Magic a lot.
Too.
It's a very good movie. So I hope that you guys are enjoying y'all's Halloween spooky week as it is right now.
Yes.
Get in all the pumpkins and apple cider, caramel vodka,
Candy corn. Oh, and here's your Halloween recipe. My very favorite, and I don't have it just for Halloween. Get a bag of candy corn
and peanuts.
Mix it with a jar of roasted peanuts, and then put in a bag of family-sized M&Ms. Mix it up. Yum.
I usually do it without the M&Ms.
But
M&Ms. So for anybody who's wondering if they want to do this and what it tastes like, if you've ever tasted a Payday candy bar, that's what candy corn and peanuts taste like together. But yes, if you add the chocolate, like you get just a little bit of chocolate
and then if you want to just go a little bit over the top, now you can only eat a little bit at a time. If you can,
don't tell people how much they can eat at one time. You let people live their lives.
Look, you'll get sick. I might know this from experience. If you can find the little caramel nuggets, like you can get like with the chocolate chips and stuff, if you can find the little caramel nuggets and put those in there,
that's good.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Delicious. So there you go. There's your little Halloween recipe.
And if you're wanting your Halloween drink recipe for the week, because I know we had apple cider mimosas last week, so your drink recipe for this week,
which I'm not partaking of because I'm on antibiotic.
Yeah, so as much as Leah squawked last week about not having, you squawked about not getting mad at me about not having caramel vodka, and then I do this week, and she has to go get an ear infection.
Look, I've got a middle ear infection, friends. Not cool.
Which is very rare, and of course Leah got a middle ear infection.
Notoriously difficult to treat. Because apparently I'm so special.
You are the ear.
I'm going to kick you in your teeth. Kick you in your teeth.
They're too pretty. You can't do that.
Come closer. I'm too lazy. She's taking a drink of the drink that I can't have.
It's delicious, guys. Apple cider, caramel vodka, ginger ale. Leah had a tiny sip earlier because I made her taste it, so she would at least know what she was missing out on.
Caramel is delicious.
It's dangerous, honestly.
Very dangerous.
But
it does not taste like alcohol.
It tastes like fall, though. It's just ugh.
She's gonna have some for me next time.
Yes, I will. I promise. Next recording, because we'll still be in fall season. It's not just a Halloween drink; it's a fall drink. It's drink for all seasons.
We're gonna garnish it with candy corn because I'm obsessed with candy corn.
Little pumpkin mallows. Anyways,
yeah,
that'd be super cute. So, after all of that, go find us on YouTube now that you can find us there. Go like and subscribe or whatever you do on YouTube. Pretty sure you just subscribe. But we'll be posting episodes there as well every week. We have a website where you can find any and all ONUC information you are looking for. It's onenationundercrime.com. We are One Nation Under Crime on Facebook and Instagram, and at OUNC on Twitter. If you love our podcast as much as we do, and we have so many new listeners, go to Apple Podcast. Give us a 5-star review. 5 stars only if you have not heard my speech yet. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. And if you have nothing nice to say and you made it this far, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Because clearly you just want to hate listen. And we're a delight, so why would you want to do that? Go leave us a 5-star review, and if you do that, send us a screenshot of it. You will be the wonderful owner of a fantastic ONUC sticker that is dishwasher, life-proof, animal-proof. I don't know. It is for sure. Well, I'll say this. It's allegedly dishwasher-proof. I have not tested it out for myself quite yet. I did have to send some out, and I did put that on the note card. It's allegedly dishwasher safe. Um, so yeah, go do that. We have a Patreon where if you would like to help with the cost of making and hosting the show, you can go to our Patreon, just search for One Nation Under Crime. There's several tiers. We would greatly appreciate it, and we will love you forever, even though we already would. That just kind of seals it in there that we just love you forever even more. We appreciate you guys listening to this week's episode of One Nation Under Crime. We hope that we will see you here, same time,
Different crime.
next week. And remember, there isn't always liberty and justice for all. Happy Halloween, guys.
Bye.
Ooh.